I am an odd contributor to the Australia China Youth Dialogue. I am neither Australian nor Chinese, and I obviously am not young. Nevertheless, I'm very happy to have an opportunity to address you at this important conference. Of course, I'm full of envy that I'm not as young as you, because you have an opportunity to shape the next generation. I don't know whether you've heard the old joke where the wizened philosopher says, "Youth is so wonderful, it's a shame it has to be wasted on the young." Nevertheless, I've learned something over the years, and I thought it would be nice to give you a few introductory thoughts that might lead you to include some of them at least in your deliberations. This is a good time, of course, to talk about Australia-China relations with the visit to Australia of Chinese President Xi Jinping and the free trade agreement that is about to be concluded. That will be a stimulus to many countries in the area, perhaps including my own, the United States. My theme today is the international public interest and the hope that young people in Australia and China, as well as elsewhere, will keep that in mind as they seek mutual understanding. Though this is a bilateral conference, no issue of importance today can be deemed exclusively bilateral. Most important issues are multilateral and involve third parties, and that's why I have a good excuse to appear before you, because the United States is intimately involved with both Australia and China. So that's the first point. The second point is bilateral meetings nevertheless can be very important. As the recent U.S.-China bilateral discussion has demonstrated, bilateral meetings can stimulate multilateral cooperation, and we need to have that cooperation desperately with respect to questions of climate change and the effort to bring an unruly climate and our unruly activities under control. Younger people, and this is my third point, are often freer to discuss imaginative, dynamic, energetic remedies for what ails mankind. And because of their idealism, they can maintain an interest in what is good for the world public, not only what's good for them or their immediate national interests. Of course, international matters like the international public interest are intimately affected by local politics, domestic politics, and we confront that immediately with respect to the first issue I wanted to discuss briefly with you, and that's climate control. It's wonderful that the United States and China seem to have reached an agreement in principle. The problem is, can they implement this agreement, this understanding, despite severe opposition at home? And Australia has a similar problem. I hope the young people of Australia can succeed in convincing their political leadership that climate change is an immediate, long-term, horrific danger to mankind. And we're going to see increasingly its impact as life goes on. Now, climate change, of course, is not the only major issue confronting us. I'll just mention three others briefly. And the first of those others really is international security in Asia, especially, most immediately, the problem of the South China Sea. Everybody talks about it, but as Mark Twain said about the weather, people don't do anything about it. And this is an area, South China Sea, territorial disputes, maritime boundaries, that holds great danger for international relations in East Asia. The one point I want to emphasize here is the potential contribution that public international law can make to the solution of these difficult problems, not only by providing the rules as the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, does, but also by providing institutions for applying those rules in a peaceful manner. And UNCLOS does provide for dispute resolution, and the Philippines indeed has taken the initiative after failing to reach agreement with China about some crucial questions, especially the so-called 9-dash line that the Chinese government has proclaimed, but we know very little about. And the Philippines arbitration offers an opportunity for leading impartial experts in the world to consider the legal basis for the so-called 9-dash line. International law and international decision-making, whether by arbitration or the International Court of Justice or some other means, cannot be the be-all and end-all to solve all problems. But it should not be neglected because it offers opportunities to narrow disputes, to promote negotiation, and to help settle disputes. And the Philippine arbitration, I believe, should not be spurned by China. I hope, and I know there is still time, that China will reconsider its rejection of the Philippine arbitration and take part in the UNCLOS decision-making process. I think this will clear the way. It will get rid of some obstacles to negotiation and promote mutual understanding. We should not rule out arbitration and adjudication as among the important peaceful means of settling disputes. Recently, we've seen the example of Bangladesh winning a law of the sea dispute over the Bay of Bengal against India. And I liked Prime Minister Modi's reaction. He is supposedly a highly nationalistic figure. Nevertheless, what Modi said was very enlightened. He said it would have been better, of course, for India to win the dispute, but it's good to have it behind us. Now we can go on and cooperate on more serious questions with Bangladesh. If other leaders of the world could take a similarly enlightened international outlook on these very sensitive issues, I think it would be helpful. The third issue I thought it worth mentioning is economic cooperation. And here I want to criticize the United States and praise China. China is proposing to have an Asian infrastructure investment bank. Asia desperately needs more investment in infrastructure. Here is an opportunity. And I'm sorry that the United States government has tried to discourage Australia and other countries in the region from taking part in the AIIB. I hope we will reconsider that position because we ought to be welcoming China into our proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and certainly not opposing other countries benefiting from China's offer to spend its huge masses of capital now accumulated on infrastructure projects that will benefit not only China, but also other Asian countries. Finally, I want to mention the most sensitive question. That's the question of civil and political rights for all citizens of the world. This is an Australian-Chinese dialogue. If either side's representatives do not feel free to discuss their views on many different subjects, there cannot be a meaningful dialogue. And as long as the Chinese people themselves do not feel free to use their constitutional right of free speech, meaningful dialogue is truncated. I hope you're going to have a good conference. I'm quite confident it should be, and I feel privileged to have had the opportunity to address you, and I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you.